2020 is now hindsight. We are officially into 2021. Hello everyone, welcome to the T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour. I'm your host, Doug DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Condi Systems. With me, working mission control, my little monkey cosmonaut, Sprite Rosewood.
Hello.
And today we're here to bring you a video that, I've been getting a lot of requests for, and that is working with white graphics with the Oki White Toner Systems and Forever Low Temp T-shirt transfer paper. Now, before we get into that topic, let's discuss a couple things to pay the bills. First off, it's 2021. We did make it, which means that we are running our We Made It sale available right now on our website, condi.com or ditrans.com. It's a $25 off coupon for all orders over $200. There's also some artwork that I believe that we're giving away as part of the promotion, and we are running a flash sale on all colors and sizes of Forever Flex Soft No Cut vinyl. Now remember, this material is compatible with any laser printer that can run a transparency or a film. It's self-weeding vinyl, similar to how the Forever Low Temp works today that we're going to show you. So flash sale on the Forever Flex Soft No Cut throughout the month of January. Make sure to take advantage of that. Oh, and by the way, if you need some light reading, make sure to download David Gross's new book, The Road to Sublimation Success. It's available on Amazon and through Kindle. So now that we've paid the power bills, let's go ahead and jump into our topic here, which is working with white-only graphics. Now, if Sprite could go ahead and jump to the t-shirt that I have here on the table. Here we have an example of a white-only graphic. Our quasi-futuristic number here, supplied to us by our friends at Forever Paper. Thank you very much. This is a Forever Low Temp Laser Dark Transfer. I ran this transfer through an Oki Pro 8432 WT white toner printer. Okay, I went through the Forever TransferRIP with this and went ahead and did the weeding process. Set it to the shirt about half an hour ago. I just want to give it a quick peel to see how it did. And this one looks like it turned out okay. Now, sometimes whenever we're working with the Forever Low Temp Laser Dark and a white only graphic, what some people might encounter is they may get a little bit of dropout in the toner coverage, so it makes the material very hard to peel off the shirt. You might get nips, let's say in fine lines or details where the transfer doesn't lay down completely. If you've ever run into these issues before, let's just kind of go over some of the tips and tricks that I personally employ to make sure that we get a successful white-only design onto our dark garments. Now, first off, what we're going to cover are some tips within the TransferRIP itself. So, Sprite, if you could, please, let's jump into the RIP and let me show some people here how I set up my artwork. Do we have the RIP up? Fantastic. Do I have a mouse to use? Yes, I do. Okay. Let's go ahead and select the graphic I just worked with. Now, right here, I've got my substrate color set to black so that you can see I've got a white-only design. If I've got a white-only design, there's no need to make any color adjustments because after all, we're just printing solid white. Now, one thing we got to understand whenever we are printing a white-only graphic, when it comes to our spot channel fill-up, which is controlling the amount of white toner, we cannot physically lay down 150% white. Pointless to do so. The most of a color that we can lay down is 100% coverage. Now, the multiplicate spot color, this basically determines the thickness of the white toner layer. Now, when we have it set as a factor of 1.00, what we're basically telling the RIP is we're doing a single pass of white. I'm going to click Preserve Partial Transparency just so I can bring out those fine lines there. Now normally, when it comes to working with a white-only design, we really can't employ any of the screening configurations. We pretty much have to go with select screening from printer. Okay? And when we do that, it blocks out most of our other commands instead of the highlights and shadows. As far as the user type is concerned, I like to go with user type 1, which is defaulted for the Forever Low Temp Laser Dark, and automatic tray detection, so that I don't have to hit the online button whenever I send the print through. Also want to make sure that no ICC profile is selected, because after all, we're not using white as a process color mixed in with other colors. We're just simply using white as an individual spot color. Now, what we've got to understand whenever we have these settings, which is what we would normally do if we were working with a multicolor design, when we're working with a multicolor design, we're going to have layers of cyan, magenta, yellow, as well as white. So in other words, we have an overall thickness that the B sheet can easily detect and therefore easily weed. But whenever we're working with a single color, which is white, and we only put down a single toner layer, it's very hard for the B sheet to recognize. So here's some tricks that you can employ within the RIP. Just to run through the process from the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and select my next graphic. Go ahead and bring that graphic into the RIP. Now when the graphic appears in my print preview screen, it will look like a blank page, but that's because this graphic is white with a transparent design. If I go ahead and change my background color, now we can see my letter, or in this case, my number. Now, let's do a better job of setting the white channel. Remember, if we're dealing with a single color, 100% is as best we can do. But we can make that white toner layer thicker by manipulating this right here, multiplicate spot by. Default is a factor of 1.00, which is a single pass. I'm going to go ahead and change that to 2.00. So in theory, the TransferRIP should be instructing the Oki 8432 or any other Oki white system that it's hooked to basically lay down twice as much white as we normally would. As far as the underfilling is concerned, I'm going to leave that at don't process because again, I'm only dealing with white toner. But I will go ahead and select the Preserve Partial Transparency just to make sure that my edges come out clean. And then at that point, like I said, as far as screening is concerned, we could use screening from printer, which means it will basically print as a solid design. We could micromask the design and put a pinhole pattern throughout the entire design. Of course, that is up to you. My advice would be if the design is naturally broken, like the numbers that we're demonstrating with, we can get away with just screening from printer. But if you have a big solid block of white, you might want to consider micromasking. So, once I've made all my changes, I'll just go ahead and hit the print button. Back to me, Sprite. Okay. Yeah, we really do need to get separate Mises. Okay, so basically what I have here, the number 1 represents a single pass of white using the Forever TransferRIP in the Oki Pro 8432. The 2 that I printed, I used 2 passes of white by basically setting the multiplication factor from 1.00 to 2.00. And just to see if there's a difference in the opacity, I went ahead and printed out a 3 and used 3 passes of white by setting the multiplicate spot color to 3.00. So in other words, to test, let's go ahead and weed this number 3 that has 3 passes of white to it. Because 3 passes of white, it should weed just as easy as any multicolor design that we were to send through the Forever TransferRIP. Now you'll notice here I'm preheating my bottom platen. I want to go ahead and do that. I've got my B sheet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my B sheet and I'm going to lay it face up on that warm platen to make sure that B sheet is dry. Only takes a couple of seconds. Let's go ahead and put our B sheet over our printed A foil. Cover with another protective sheet. Now the press setup is important here. Normally whenever we're working with Forever Low Temp Laser Dark, pardon me, we would normally have our temperature set at between 310 to 330 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Now, when we're working with a multicolored design, that's all well and good. But when we're only working with a single color design, what I'm trying to avoid is overheating these transfers. And the reason would be is if I overheat, you're going to know by what we call snowing effect, which is little white specks or little white wavy lines that appear around your design where you don't want them to belong. Now, we can scrape those away and apply the design and salvage it, but we've basically created a lot of work for ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover a couple of different techniques that you can use in conjunction with the press if you're only printing with a single toner layer. Now, like I said, if we go twice the normal amount of white or 3 times the normal amount of white, weeding should be easy. And that's what I would normally recommend because these transfers are expensive. You know, there's really no sense in wasting a $4 sheet of Forever Low Temp Laser Dark just to save a mere 30 cents, 40 cents in toner. We might as well go ahead and use the extra toner, make the design more opaque, make that white really pop out, and have an easier time weeding with our press configured like we would normally configure it. But if we're only going to use a single toner layer, we're going to cover some of the tips that I like to use when working with a single toner layer to enhance the probability that I'm going to get a clean and successful weed. But just to make sure that our press is calibrated, let's check this weed on 3 layers of white. I'll lift the press, move my protective sheet, keep the B sheet low as I peel it away from the A foil. Keep the A foil over the warm platen. Now, there is our weeded design. And I'm going to try to hold this up to the camera. It may be difficult to see, but we should see a perfect indentation of our original design in that B sheet. And looking at this B sheet here, that B sheet is really clean. So I know I got a full emulsion release, and this transfer should work just fine. But like I said, what if we're dealing with a single toner layer? Here's some tricks that you can employ. All right? So I'm going to take my number 1. I'm going to take my B sheet. Again, dry out that B sheet. Just a step that I do every time. Put the 2 sheets together. Cover. And if I have a white-only design, the first thing that I'm going to try is increasing my dwell time to 2 minutes 30 seconds as opposed to 2 minutes, okay? Now, the reason I'm choosing to increase the dwell time is because Forever would recommend that whenever you're dealing with a single toner layer, in this case white, they recommend increasing the pressure 1/2 to 1 full revolution turn when you're working with just a white only design. And again, that's to make sure that we drive that B sheet into the A foil. Now, what can happen there by adding that extra pressure is we could get those, what I call snow dots, within the design on the A foil. Now, like I said, if we do that, we've just made the job that much harder. The easiest thing to adjust is time, which is why I'm going an extra 30 seconds to give that emulsion extra time to try to find and settle over that single layer of white toner. Another trick that we're going to try is we're going to try a laminator. Now, this is a laminator that I got off of Amazon. It's about a $30 to $40 laminator. I can alternate between 3 mil and 5 mil thickness. What I'm going to do is take my printed A foil, my blank B sheet, and I'm going to put those together like I would be putting them in the heat press, but instead feed them through the laminator. Now, hopefully, what this is going to help fuse these two sheets together.
TTPPHH. We're going to go with Tiny Systems. Okay.
Are we back?
I believe we made it.
Super sweet. Yeah, I was going to say 2021 experiencing some technical difficulties, but hey, nothing we can't work around, right? All right, so to recap where I had left off, I just sent my A foil and B sheet through my Amazon laminator, my $30, $40 laminator. So now, after they come out, I've got those two sheets here on the press, and I'm just going to go ahead, swing my press over, and hit them for the normal 2 minutes that I would normally do. Okay, so as that's cooking, I got some other examples for you here. Here is the shirt that I ran through the TransferRIP, where I increased the spot color multiplier to 2.00 as opposed to 1.00. And remember, we want to roll the design off, so to speak. We don't want to lift up. Very easy weed. Now, let's compare it to this one here, where we used 3.00 in the multiplicate spot color. You see this one right here, that just rolls off like a champ. Now, if I can somehow get them side by side. Okay. I don't know if the camera can pick it up here, but whenever I have, let's say, like a big swath of white, so to speak, I might be able to see just a little bit of backgrounding from the B sheet, but overall the image is intact. Going with the 3X, that's a solid white right there. Now remember, these two sheets put through the laminator, and then just press them as normal. All right. And again, I would call that a pretty good weed attempt with the Forever Low Temp. Okay, so let's put our theory to the test here. This was the design that we did for 2 minutes 30 seconds. Went ahead and trimmed that one here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this one up next, the one that came out of the laminator. And whenever I'm doing my trimming, if I can, I like to leave myself about an inch. Okay, so extra time, laminator. Let's dry these designs on a t-shirt. Grab one here. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to be using a Hanes Beefy Tee 100% cotton shirt. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my platen. Get the shirt as smooth as I can. I'm going to grab my sticky lint roller. Now, somebody told me that sticky lint roller is redundant. It should just be a lint roller. Well, we're based in beautiful Mobile, Alabama, and down here, it's a sticky lint roller.
Just to point out, there are other types of lint rollers that are not necessarily sticky, so you are being accurate.
Well, if it's not sticky, I don't want it, Sprite. Because I want to get these filaments off so they don't become a permanent part of my shirt. All right, so we did the lint roll. Let's do the preheat. Preheat, I just drop the platen down on the shirt for 5 to 10 seconds. Want a nice smooth area, get rid of any moisture. There we go. So, this is the one that went for an extra 30 seconds. I'm going to put it on the left side of the shirt. This is the print that went through the laminator. Let's put it on the right side. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do, just to make sure that everything is cool. I'm going to trim that edge there so I don't have any overlap. Same with this edge here. It's okay if I have a little, I just don't want a ton. It may affect the way the design lays down. All right, so let's do a side-by-side comparison here. Line them up close enough for government work. I'm going to cover with some protective paper. And we're going to press the design. I'm going about 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 seconds. Using what I would call medium pressure, the same pressure that I use to do my A sheet and B sheet weeding, I use when I apply to the shirt. By putting the shirt inside of the heat press, it adds a little bit of extra thickness that we need that gives us that little bit of extra pressure. So, like I said, I don't like to mess with my pressure. I would rather adjust the time, or I'd rather use kind of an off device as opposed to messing with the pressure. So that's 30 seconds. Let's take our shirt. Let's put it on the table. Now, another good tip that I would suggest is we want to allow these shirts to completely cool. Now, sometimes that might be a couple of minutes for a shirt to come to room temperature. The shirts that we did earlier, that I did the peel and reveal for you, those shirts were sitting out a half an hour before we peeled them. So just to let you guys know, there is no penalty in waiting too long to remove the film. You know, in other words, we could let them sit an hour. We could come back after lunch. We could come back into the shop the next day and remove the film. There's no penalty. But if we try to remove it warm, that's when the film has a tougher time releasing. As you roll it, you might hear more crackling. Also, if it's still warm, some of the design may want to stay on the film and not release to the shirt. So in other words, with a white-only design, another pro tip would be make sure your design completely cools down. But in the interest of time here, I use some of our Chromolux textured aluminum to cool these down rapidly. So let's try this side here where we went a little extra time. Remember, with this technique, I increased my dwell time with the A foil and B paper from 2 minutes to 2 minutes 30 seconds. And that rolled off completely clean. Let's try the one that we put through the laminator. Using the laminator to help set the toner on the A foil and the B sheet, and then pressing as normal. And again, this is separating easy. If it's separating easy, you have no nips, so to speak, then it's working. All right, spray back to me. Now, one thing you probably need to understand, going the extra time or working with a laminator, it will help with your overall consistency, but it may not necessarily be a 100% cure. What I've found that tends to work just about every time is using the TransferRIP and the multiplicate spot color option to increase the white toner thickness. By laying down a thicker white toner layer, it's easy for the bead sheet to weed, and that's what usually gives me the most consistent results. Now, the techniques that we covered work great if you're dealing with line art, clip art, or vector art designs, but what if you're dealing with bitmaps where you have a predominant amount of white in a bitmap? Well, we'll try to tackle that subject next time on our T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour, which will be airing in 2 weeks, so make sure you stay tuned. And on one more note, I would like to wish my sister a very happy birthday today. Happy birthday, Pootie. Big brother loves you. Thank you for attending the T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour. Remember, if you have any questions about the material we covered, email us, TTPPHH@condi.com, and we'll address your questions as we come in. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Until next time, I'm Doug DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Condi. My time is up. I thank you for yours.